I'll get rid of that, put it in that pocket.
Just see if this isn't sitting on your ear yet. Do you mind if I...
No, away you go. Yeah.
That's looking good, that side.
Yep. Yep.
Feel comfortable with that?
Yep. Yeah, that's fine.
I'll turn you off at the mixer until you get up to present.
Yep, that's fine. Okay. This is all very technical. Gosh.
Yeah, this is the team board. Good evening. Can you please make your way to your seats and close the curtains up the back? That would be lovely. Welcome one and all. This is the Christchurch Photographic Society, and so if you aren't for here, you are most welcome to stay. Have we got any visitors in the room? Hello, where are you from? From Kashmir. Welcome along. Oh, hello, welcome. This evening, our program is that we have an amazing member, Garry Chalmers, who's going to talk to us about the challenges of safari photography in Botswana. We will always we'll have some messages afterwards as well, and then that's the close of the evening after that presentation. And just a couple of housekeeping things. If you could have your cell phones on silent, that would be lovely. And if there's an emergency, our meeting place is across the road, and our emergency exits are either side of the stage or where we came from. The bathrooms are out the back to the right, and hopefully you've managed to get a cuppa and wet the whistle so that we're all ready to go. Any questions? Excellent. I love silence. Okay. I'm Karen. I forgot to introduce myself. Sorry. And we've had Dennis earlier on today talking at the 7 o'clock session, which didn't quite go according to plan, but we still got there. And I have the pleasure of introducing Garry. Gary's been a member for about 3 years, and he picked up his first camera in 1972, a Pentax, purchased in Singapore on the way to London to do an engineering scholarship for 3 years. Since then, he has done some black and white developing stuff before digital. I'm sorry. And about 5 years ago, after a bit of a hiatus with children and families and work, he has picked up the camera again far more seriously and has had a lot of fun. And it's this fun in terms of exploring and how he goes about getting that perfect shot that Gary's going to talk to us today. So please welcome Garry to the stage.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? That's a good start. I've just realised really that Karen has a hell of a lot more experience than me in what I'm going to talk about, has done a lot more than me, has visited far more countries, and so I might get her up here at the partway through. I'm going to talk about really just my personal experience, and others who've done it will have had, have gone to different places, they will have experienced different things and had different challenges. So it is rather a personal thing, and if you'll take it as that as we go through that. So the trip was to Botswana. It took place last year in October. It takes place in the season just over the peak season because going there is very expensive, and it's past the point where you've got the rains that have come down through. The problem is the temperatures are getting up. So we were up to about 44 degrees as part of this, which was a bit debilitating at times. So in terms of what I'm going to go through, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools we used, then the places visited, really what this presentation is about and what it's not about, the main challenges as I experienced them, a one-word description of my safari photography, going to give a bunch of photographs illustrating those things, and then talk a little bit perhaps about what I would have done differently. So the tools, I'm pretty old school. I've got a Nikon D500 DSLR. It's a cut down version of the D5 for those of you who know it. It's a pretty capable wildlife camera, and it's an APS sensor. I elected to take a small telephoto, which is a 70 to 300 to fit on DX, so that gives you about 100 to 450 mils. And that's what I used almost exclusively in the photographs you'll see, except for a few wide-angle shots. The purpose really of talking to you was to talk about the challenges. So the things I have got are the good and the bad and the ugly, and none of them have been post-processed at all. The only thing that's happened is there's been a bit of cropping, and in particular that's mainly with the birds where you couldn't get very close at all. And so this is really about what was captured rather than about what you could do afterwards. So where was the trip we had? We started in Christchurch, way down here, immediately missed the flight, and all of our connections through to Livingston, which is up here. And so we arrived a day late and really missed our time at Victoria Falls, except for a couple of hours. From Livingston, we went through to Kasane and then across the border to Namibia to get a visa, which we then needed to come down the Chobe River through here. So this is the Chobe National Park here. We then flew in about here to the Savote Channel and spent a couple of nights there, and then went down into 2 private game reserves in the Okavanga Delta, through to Morne, and then back out to Joburg. So I don't know whether any of you have been watching the TV programs that have taken place over the last 3 weeks, a program called Walking with the Elephants. If you had, basically quite a lot of what we did is in exactly that area, especially when you got down into here and certainly in the Chobe area. So, how did it go? We started off in the falls, as you can see there, a short distance along the road. My wife got incredibly excited because there was a couple of elephants, and this was just travelling to Kasane before we started anything. And that was the very first animal we saw. We then spent a couple of nights on a houseboat on the Chobe River, and then we could go out each day on skiffs and see various things, especially the elephants, up close, the hippos, crocodiles and other things. Tried desperately to take pictures of the beautiful African sun that Karen will no doubt have got some wonderful photographs. I found it incredibly difficult to get good photographs of it. From there, Kasane, we travelled in a light plane, so this takes about 9 people. In terms of what you're allowed to take, we had an 18 kilogram limit on what we could take, of which mine at least 6 kgs is cameras and lenses and binoculars. So you travelled quite light, and the beauty of that was you could travel very quickly between locations, and so you could literally have a safari in the morning with all your gear. They then dropped you at the airdrome, you flew to the next place, took your stuff to where you were staying, and then had another safari that night. So you weren't spending hours and hours and hours in a vehicle between places. Savote Channel, this is a public reserve. We spent that under canvas, and so you lived in a tent like the one at the left, and you ate outdoors at your dining area out here, and they prepared meals and things for you in another couple of tents and areas. We went then to a couple of Okavanga safari lodges. For those of you who are not familiar with the Okavanga, it's the only inland delta in the world, and the floodwaters come down from the north. They go into the delta, which is a massive swamp, and then disappear into the sand there, and just south of it, it's basically the Kalahari Desert. So we stayed at those 2 camps. Basically, this is what the one on the left would look like. Generally, there was some water. This is the edge of the dining area that you could be in. Again, me trying to take pictures of the sunset. I either had, as you can see here, the trees washed out and just got the sun, or the reverse, beautiful sun and very little in the trees. Where you were here, you're basically under tents in those safari lodges. They're not allowed to put anything in permanent, so they're basically a pole platform with canvas above. And the animals are free to wander through there, and they do, as you can see here from having lunch. I'll now move on to about really what this presentation is and is not about. There's 2 shots here, and you can see the one on the right here. Whoops, sorry, I've gone and pressed the wrong. The one on the right here, you'll see is solely a photographic safari. Everybody, I don't think you're probably allowed on the boat unless you've got a 500mm lens. Everybody is on a chair that swivels 360 degrees with a gimbal, and the sole purpose is just photography, absolutely nothing else. By comparison, this is us on the left, so you'll see people there just sitting looking at the view and the animals. Some have got binoculars, some have got iPhones, and the odd person has got a telephoto lens. So very much where we were, the trip was about a group of people with different imperatives. When we were on land, very much we were the group to the left here, where you've got half a dozen or 8 people in a 4x4 Land Cruiser, and not just 2 people in a Land Cruiser by yourself, where you can give directions. This is where I want to stop, this is what I want to do. Again, people wanted to stop and have morning tea and get out of the vehicle, which you're only allowed to do very seldom. And they also wanted to have a drink before the sun went down. So certainly, again, not purely a photographic expedition. It's certainly about being able to enjoy where you were living, and the one on the right, in this particular one, you had a little wee pool, and you could sit there and literally watch the animals. Fair to say you were in and out of that pool every 15 minutes at 44 degrees, letting the water dry on you, just about expiring, getting back into it. So you didn't do much during the middle of the day. Again, whilst it would have been great to get a lot closer to these animals, you simply couldn't do it for safety, or the people didn't want to get that close. Certainly you also had to contend at times when you were in the public area with a large number of people also wanting to do things their way, if you want to put it that way. You were constrained to areas for the tracks. You weren't allowed to tear through the bush so that you could get a absolute great picture of the lion or the leopard or whatever, and therefore you're quite opportunistic, if you want to put it that way. If you came across a hyena, there he is sitting in the middle of the track, you could get a great picture. Likewise, when you drove by, instead of getting a great picture of the lion, he's behind some trees. Not a great composition and things like that. Other parts, absolutely fantastic. 600 wild dogs left in Africa, and those dogs there are doing their thing they do before they set off on a hunt. They all get together and basically run, yap with one another, get into a huddle. And that was right beside the track. So we were very, very fortunate for that. Again, on the right-hand side, this is right beside a track. Leopard just came out right on dark. That picture would be taken with a very high ISO. Again, when you're on the Chobe River, trying to get pictures of things when the animals come out. That's a herd of giraffes. They looked fantastic in the binoculars, but trying to get pictures of them, really difficult, really challenging. And again, you're just stuck with trying to get a sun in the location where you are. So I'm going to talk about the challenges as I experience them. Again, could be quite different to others. But the three things I'm going to talk about is really the composition, which we all like to get as photographers. We like to see what we've got, figure out how it would really look, go to a different perspective, get the light in a different location, etc. And then the last one is the sort of health and safety that you've got in these remote areas, which is a challenge and a constraint at times. So the first of those, the composition. Again, when we were there, you're stuck in a boat with several other people. They want to provide you or provide the group with something that satisfies all of them, which isn't necessarily what you want as a photographer. And likewise, I would love to have got out and wandered around to do composition. This is one of the few times on the right where you were allowed out, which was to have a cup of coffee in the morning. And these were all in very open areas, so you weren't allowed to be anywhere near bushes, under trees, where something might decide they want to eat you. The other thing, this was a challenge for me because I elected to have a 70 to 300mm lens, and with these pictures we were literally nudging up against the bank on the left. So to try and get a lovely composition of the elephant, which you'd love to have got, you couldn't zoom out far enough. So what did you do? You cropped all his ears and you did the best you can. Likewise with the crocodile, this was frighteningly close, and certainly the skippers of the boats will try and get you into a position which is exciting and which lets you see things. Certainly this one on the right was something to behold when he's only a couple of metres from you and is going to go into the water and your boat is not that big. Again, I hark back to you're stuck on a 4x4 on a track. You can't change the location, you can't leave the vehicle. So the only emu we saw, we came around a corner and there he was. By the time you've lifted your camera up, he's presented his ass to you and he's out of focus when you try and take the picture. So again, the Kurdu on the right, you literally come around the corner and there he is standing there in the bush looking at you. Be great to get out and go to the right a little bit so that the bushes aren't covering his flanks, but you've just got to do the best you can. So having a camera like the D500, which is ultra fast in terms of its focusing, and the same with the lens, it hasn't got a lot of glass to move around, and spot metering, so long as you were pretty careful, you could actually get something that was in focus and wasn't focused on the background. Again, coming to composition, these guys are not very far away, and it would have been great on, say, the one on the right-hand side, left-hand side, to wander across to the left, but you couldn't get out of your vehicle so that you could frame him beautifully in the trees. And likewise, for the one on the right, it would be great to move to the left so that the lion was looking directly at you. As I said, none of these have been post-processed, so we can obviously do quite a bit of it when we're finished. Again, the height at which you have the camera, I mean, it's always great to take pictures straight up and down and at all various angles. The one on the left, really fortunate to be able to get that composition looking straight at the animal. The one on the right, that was very exciting. I mean, we'd literally just flown from Kasane down to Savote. We got off the plane. We'd been less than 10 minutes on the track going to our accommodation, and that's what we came across. So it's a typical thing of the leopard in the tree. It's got the kill up there, but you couldn't get round the other side to get a picture of the face. But we did manage it in some of the others. Just moving on to lighting. Again, you'll see the picture on the left. That was a similar one to the one I had previously. I took several playing with the ISO. That would be set very high, and still couldn't really get the giraffes there. And it was one where there was quite a number. There must have been 15 of them, and to try and actually get them to a reasonable size with the lighting. At night, it would have been great to have stopped somewhere where you'd frame things with trees, you'd frame things with animals. This is probably the best you'd get. And this was probably me playing with my exposures so that I didn't burn it out, so I didn't get too much grain. Safari, we're up at 5:30. We had breakfast at 6. We'd gone shortly afterwards, and we're out till 11 o'clock. And then during the middle of the day, when the temperatures are really high, you survive, have lunch and have a swim or just lie down. And then you're out from 4 o'clock till about 8 o'clock. So the one on the right is taken quite late in the day. And the drinks they call sundowners, so they were very liberal in what they provided you with. The issue was, although you had as much alcohol as you wanted to drink, you knew if you drank it, you'd be a cock case, and literally, what was the point of being on the safari? Again, lighting, a challenge. These are taken quite late at night. You do opportunistically get a couple of interesting ones, which is the animal on the left, or the two animals on the left. And again, I really, really struggled with trying to get that beautiful African sun straight out of the camera. Clearly, I'm having a good play round in Lightroom to try and do something with that. The other thing is, when you have got good light, which is towards the middle of the day or early evening, generally the animals are trying to keep cool. So the first thing they want to do is get under a tree. And as soon as or in the shade, so as soon as they get under a tree, you then want to sort of provide the perspective and the background and the situation you're taking it in. And clearly you can see with the giraffe on the left, you've managed to get the background, you've managed to get a wonderful silhouette, but really going to have to play in Lightroom to be able to bring out the texture of the coat. Again, when you do get some of these opportunistic things, which is a pretty classic picture on the right of the lion and the lioness there, you find because they're trying to get into the shade, you've lost basically all their bodies, and you've really just got the heads and partially in shade. So you can do the best you can with some of those things. Again, just playing with, trying desperately to get that African sun. I found it incredibly challenging to do, and you seem to have to compromise either on the composition or on basically the lighting there. It was great to get some birds you could just see flying across there on the right, and there's some really gnarly trees that you get in Africa where you can try. This was the one on the left was where we asked the driver and everybody in it would they mind stopping while we took the photograph, only me, and the others sat there waiting for their drinks to come. Again, lighting. In our case, as I mentioned, we would go for a safari in the morning with all our bags on board. We'd be taken to an airstrip, and then we would fly to the next location. And therefore you were travelling in the air when the haze was at absolute worst. So trying to take some pictures from an aircraft at that time of the day was pretty hopeless. Probably you'd be able to do some work in Lightroom with it. So this is the town of Kasane at the left, and this is the Chobe River that we were on with the houseboat. The right with Namibia in the upper part of the section. So you can see they tend to get a bit washed out as well. And even if you try and adjust your your f-stops, then you don't always get what you'd like to get. So, what did I use? And this is only me. I'm sure Karen would have done something totally different. I used a lens with ultra-fast focusing, and that was mainly so that you could get the animals should they move or do various things. I started with a sweet spot of about f8 on the lens for that lens. I selected the shutter speed required for movement, and then just adjusted the ISO to suit. I tried to use multiple shots in bracketing for post-processing. So I would take it with the spot metering on the animal and then focus on something around it a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, hold that and recompose and take it. Dust was a real problem. I'm sure Karen would know that. So thinking about ripping lenses on and off while you do this, you're asking for trouble. So I stuck with the main one with just an occasional wide-angle lens, still got dust in the camera, so that is quite a challenge. Health and well-being, it's a strange thing to talk about when you're giving a photographic talk, but if you're going into areas of swamp, basically you've got to really think about malaria and dengue fever. I've known people who've got each of those, and it's debilitating sometimes for the rest of their life. It's horrible medication. It doesn't make you feel great, but you've just got to be on it. You then want to be sensible, and we still got stung with the mosquitoes. You're in and around water the whole time. It's a massive swamp. So you end up having to really use long sleeve shorts, long trousers, time at the ankles, floppy hat for the sun. You'll be really sensible about hydration and drink a lot of water, especially in the middle of the day with the temperatures we had. And the doctor we went to, who specialised in African trips, gave us a whole bunch of medications because you were stuck where you were. There's only one way out, and that's to get flown out. And there's no pharmacy nearby to go and get something. So I was trying to sum things up and say in one word, what was it? And from my point of view, it was opportunistic. That was what it was all about. You were constrained as to what you could do, and you just basically had to do your best with the settings you'd chosen and the lenses you chose, and then be as quick as you could with it. I'm going to show the following slides. The examples are mainly from the Okavango Delta. They represent missed opportunities. They represent bad photographs, poor composition, bad lighting. I think there's a couple of amazing shots in there. Some pretty scary situations when you look back on them. And I'll just point out the bird photography, I found a challenge. You were so far away trying to get them, and even with a telephoto equivalent of 450, you had to basically do a lot of cropping to get anything and then lose a lot of the definition. So, a few photographs. These are taken almost at dark. So, on the left-hand side is the wild dogs starting a hunt at almost dark. There's only 600 of them left in Africa, according to our guides. They see one hunt every 2 or 3 months, and we actually saw 2 in 2 days. So they said, you guys are just been very fortunate. So that's the alpha female. They've had that get together just beforehand in that huddle that they had, and then suddenly the driver said, when we see the alpha female go, I'm going to tell you, put your camera away, put your binoculars away, put your cell phones away, hold on, because we're going after these guys. And because we were in a private game reserve, we were allowed to go off-road. And so we saw these guys take off. And then after, it wasn't very long at all, I would have said less than 5 minutes, we saw them all disappearing into bushes with an impala in front of them. And we would have been there in less than 2 minutes. And this is the dogs literally tearing this thing to pieces by the time you got there in 30 seconds. Again, almost dark, and this is me overcompensating for that, and basically washed quite a bit of it out. So again, seeing that, utterly opportunistic, just so lucky to see it. Can be a bit scary, as I pointed out already. That guy on the left, a Nile crocodile, they're a big beast, and you're up real close. And when they go into the water, they're literally right in front of you there, and you're only a couple of metres away in a boat, you sort of do your best to kind of frame what's there, and I chose to do the head there. And clearly, when I post-process it, I'll bring out some of the detail in the jaws and things. This guy here is taken at 70mm. He is very close, and the road is literally right beside us. And so you were very lucky to get him framed, to be able to get the detail in the face. And I probably should say the other 6 shots I got of him with his tail cut off, his head cut off, out of focus and all the other things. So that was one that I think came out not too bad. Even more scary, what you're looking at there is the open side of a Land Cruiser, and this is the seat here. I was sitting there about 3 seconds before this guy came to decide to sit down. And I saw him coming and literally just moved across to the middle seat. And again, that's taken with the zoomed right into 70mm. And this is literally his mane on the edge of your seat. So again, incredibly opportunistic, chances of it happening very low. And surprisingly, I think I managed to get his head in focus, which is quite surprising because I must have been at the absolute limit of the lens. Again, with these ones, this is the boat nudged right in, so you can see this little knoll here. This goes straight down into the river, and we're sitting in one of those skiffs you saw. And of course, the skipper is trying to get in real close so people can see this thing, and they can see everything, and I'm saying, I want to be further back so I can frame it properly. So, but that doesn't happen. So you end up with the sorts of things you can see here, which is the elephants, and you would want to probably crop in even further with just the head if you were going to present it as a photograph. I found in the middle of the day it was quite difficult to get the exposure right and still capture the texture on the skin of the elephant, which is quite remarkable. Again, this is taken very early in the morning, and the lions have just had a kill, and this is a pride of 3 males, I think it was 5 females and about 9 cubs, which is very rare. We were told it was such a strong pride because no male would become able to come in and take on the 3 males who were part of this, and therefore the cubs didn't get killed by the alpha male that came in and displaced the male there. So on the left, you just had to just grab the shot while you could see it. It's nice, and obviously crop it further to have the mother there and then the cubs coming towards her. You can see on the right, you've got 2 litters. One's quite a bit older than the other one, but they're all there together. Quite difficult. It would have been great if you could have wandered around the other side and saw their faces, but at least you could get some of the faces here and here coming towards you. And then, of course, one of them did exactly what you just absolutely wanted to see, which was you could zoom in far enough to basically get a focus on it. You could get them looking towards you and then even snarling. But again, with the low light, really difficult to get the sharpness that you would have liked, but probably far better to have been able to capture it than believe you get a perfect picture a long way away, in my view. On the left, you did get the sort of photogenic part of the male and female sitting there and basically looking over their shoulder, which I thought the composition, the way they were, was great. Lighting, not great. And then on the right, they decided to put on a display for us as well, so early in the morning, which surprised us. I guess the other thing we found was the wildlife, when it was there, was prolific. You don't just see one impala or one kurdu or one wildebeest. You generally see a herd. And I have captured only part of that herd of wildebeest. They were all going to the waterhole, so the time we were going was good. Temperatures was high. The water had gone in a lot of areas. So the animals tended to congregate around the waterhole. The people we went with and beyond are into conservation. So they'd actually put a well down about 2 kilometres away. They got a bulldozer in and excavated out this waterhole, and then they'd pipe the water the 2 kilometres and pump it there, so that the animals have got water, because in the Savote area, the channel used to provide all the water, but it hasn't flowed for 10 years now. So you get quite a few pictures of this around the waterholes, and then you can see thousands of birds, the animals down there, and that waterhole would have been surrounded probably by 100 animals at one stage, and then suddenly it's just a single lion there. And they've all taken off. So again, it would have been great to have gone to the left of this, been able to look straight at the lion, get him with his eyes open. You're simply not allowed out of the vehicle. We were very fortunate with leopards in the end. We managed to see 6 different leopards at various times. There's a couple here. You can see the one on the left. The lighting isn't too bad in terms of what we had. One on the right, quite difficult to get the lighting, even although you're using spot lighting on them, and to get the composition. Didn't open his eyes for us, but I think that one also had a kill up in the tree. But at least you got the pose for what it was like. The other ones are posing a lot better for you. You could, a reasonable distance away, you weren't looking up at them so much. They're obviously looking for food, and you had them so that they weren't covered in branches and leaves and things like that. So they didn't come out too bad. One thing I've noticed as a photographer, you're sitting there thinking, I've got this out of focus, because you're looking at the spots on the leopard, and you're trying to say, I've got something wrong. The answer is that's the way they are. They sort of disperse into the surrounding fur. So sometimes you're searching for things that don't actually exist. I felt I had limited ability to capture birds with the lens. Generally, they were some distance away, and therefore you'll find the one on the left has been heavily cropped. It's been great to have a 500mm lens to achieve that. You can see the one on the right was one of the few that literally, as we were driving along the track, that you can see you can literally see the tar marks. You've got this guy sitting there strutting his stuff right beside the track. Would you have composed it that way if you could, with the grass and the sand and bits and pieces? Absolutely not. You would have done something completely different. They're still not going to let you out the vehicle, so you're stuck with what you've got. There's a couple there where you're trying to get them with a lot of cropping to try and get the colour, and have lost quite a bit of the definition that I've seen at the society here when people are taking great, wonderful photographs of birds. There's a couple where you got them in quite interesting perspective, especially the one on the left. I got a nice triptych, if you like, of these guys on the right with the three just a little bit different, all beside one another, which I'll put together at some point. So what would I have done differently? The first one's an interesting perspective when you've finished. I would have spent less time with my eye glued to a camera. I had a pair of very good quality Nikon binoculars. I would have used them more often, and I would have used my eyes more often and just soaked in what I was viewing, because you would have had that memory for some time. I think I would have used the aperture priority with one f-stop higher, probably f11. I felt it would have given me a little bit more in terms of errors in focusing and composition, and give me more opportunities for post-processing. I generally used exposure bracketing, but I think I would have used it more often. I guess for those, I think a few people were saying they've just come here. To me, exposure bracketing is when you vary the exposure from what would be ideal to a little bit darker and a little bit lighter to see which would be best. And certainly if you're taking raw images, then a little bit darker means you've got far more to play with when you come to post-processing, rather than if it's been overexposed and washed out. I guess it'd been good to have two cameras, but I guess I would have said I would have risked the dust in the camera and taken a few more with a 16 to 80 that I've got on there, which is a much faster lens. And I don't think I'd go back at 44 degrees. It was pretty debilitating. And as I said, at lunchtime, you're literally either jumping in a little bit of shower, which is hot, and lying there and letting the water evaporate off you, going back another 15 minutes, doing it again, and having to drink an enormous amount of water. You don't feel like eating much. Certainly don't feel like having alcohol. If I did the trip again, what would I do? I think the Chobe River was something quite different to a lot of other places in Africa, in that the herds of elephants there are just enormous. I understand Botswana itself has gone from having 12,000 elephants to 64,000 in a space of 10 years. So they've been encouraging it for tourism and looking after them, but obviously they're starting to become a bit of a pest and being incredibly destructive. And the interaction with farmers and other things is becoming a problem. Nothing to see 30 hippos all tucked up together. In the heat of the day, they just sit in the river, and then at night they go out and eat something like 500 kilograms of grass and then get back in the river the next day. Supposedly you've got about 500 species of birds in the area we were in, and obviously got the big crocodiles, which is pretty cool. I'd say you spend some money on a decent pair of binoculars, because by the time you use those, what you see is pretty damn special. And often it is the textures and colours and things that you just are not going to be able to capture when you're doing the type of trip I did. If you're going there as BBC with half a ton of equipment and you're going to be there for 3 weeks, well, that's a totally different situation. I think having a fairly lightweight camera with a equivalent of sort of 100 to 450mm zoom was really good to be able to just pick it up very quickly off the seat beside you, or have your binoculars there and be able to do that. So I think having something light, I think, was quite good. As I said, avoid the 44 degrees, don't go in October. Is it worthwhile paying the very high price to go to some of the lodges? I think it is if you've got limited time. If you can clearly go there for a month, well, why would you bother? You're going to spend a day between things. But the ability to be by yourself almost in these parks, I mean, when you go out in the vehicles, you don't see another vehicle for the day sometimes. You might have 6 or 8 people with you, or you might only be 2 of you. But that's pretty damn special compared to the first one, where you've got half a dozen Land Cruisers running around all vying for position to try and take a picture of the lions. So that's where I got to. Thank you for the opportunity. Happy to answer any questions if anyone's got any.
Garry, I'm very intrigued that you had a lion right next to you.
It's a really interesting question, because what we were told and had drilled into us, and of course as soon as I saw one, got excited. They said, when we get close to these guys, do not move within the vehicle. They said the lion sees the vehicle as a bluff body. It doesn't see 4 or 5 tasty morsels inside it. So they said, don't move, but of course I got excited to start with.
So that person had a firearm on board?
Sorry?
Did the driver?
No. Nope. Part of me says yes, and part of me says no. I think you can get so bound up in trying to capture the photographs, you just miss the experience, is what I came away with. So yeah, I think I'd be quite happy to go back and do one just for photography, but I think I'd also quite like to do one which gives you the whole experience. Vaccinations were malaria. We didn't need yellow fever. We had typhoid already. We had been inoculated for rabies previously. So where we were is not the nasty area. The yellow fever is the nasty one, and we were just at Victoria Falls, and going north from there was where you had to be careful.
So you needed rabies for where you were?
Sorry?
You needed rabies for where you were?
Grey?
Did you need the rabies for where you
No. No, no is the answer. No, they said if you're getting out and going through villages where there's dogs, they said just avoid the dogs. And they said, but basically for the trip you're going on, you're very unlikely to encounter any. And if you steer well clear of them. Well, no, because you're on a safari, you basically tend to avoid them. You're basically picked up, and for example, they were very good. I mean, we missed our connection, so the day we were having to see the falls didn't happen. So we said, well, is there any chance of seeing it for an hour or a couple of hours? And they said, yep. And then the people who were picking us up said, don't worry, we'll come down to the falls and pick you up. Just go do what you want to do for a few hours. So then you're picked up and taken literally to Kasane through several lots of customs onto the boat. And then again, you're taken back and through. So the only people you see are basically the people working in the lodges, which are generally all local. So I think the driver you saw on the Land Cruiser there, she lived in the village on the edge of the Kalahari. So, we were there in October. Yep. So the price goes down by, what is it? At least a third as soon as you tip over into October. So we were penny pinching. It didn't feel like it when I paid the bill though. No, in fact, I looked at taking a tripod, decided against it, then went to consider doing a monopod. And then when I was read a bit more, I actually took a plastic bag and then I stuffed inside it a towel, and then I basically partially blew up the plastic bag, and then I could, if I needed to, I could rest it over the side of the vehicle. But in fact, when we got there, the vehicles had mounts for you to use your camera on if you wanted to. No, I went through the whole thing of literally going to the camera shop and then go through the whole thing and then decided no. And that worked really well. I mean, I guess they suggest that you would take a wheat bag and then fill it up with wheat and get rid of it. But of course that weighs another kilogram and you were limited to weight. Camping out without a generator was certainly in the canvas when we were under canvas, but the 4x4 had an additional battery in it and an inverter. So they basically said, well, if you want to charge it, you can basically plug it into the Land Cruiser. So they specifically thought about that. Were more lodges, and they actually had big banks of what do you call it? Solar. You couldn't. It was certainly enough to charge your phone. I mean, I took three batteries with me, and I got through 2 of them under canvas, and then after that I could charge them. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Is that on? Yeah. Thank you very much, Garry. I really enjoyed that. Brings back some awesome memories. So, some notices. I understand Diana has been fabulous at sending out the email, but just in case, I'll read a couple of the things off that are due for in the next few days. Sorry, I can't see a thing. Right. So next week, on the 21st, we have John McCall and John Hawkins at 7 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, we have the Natural History Print Competition Critique and Results. And what is closing soon is on the 21st of August, the projected image number 7, Landscape. And on the 4th of September is the Natural History projected image number 3. And, the 11th of September is C-grade projected image and print 2 images each is also due in if you wish to join. So, is there any other notices from the committee that is to go up?
Some of you you'll remember the presentation that we had 2 weeks ago with the New Zealand Defence Force. There's a thank you card for them by the door. So for those of you who saw the presentation here or on YouTube, I would appreciate that. Just sign the card and we'll send it to them later on. Thank you.
Okay. So I would like to thank Dennis for the 7 o'clock session, improvisation, thank you. And I'm very thankful for Garry to present his trip to Botswana for us. And thank you very much, Tim and Wayne. Thank you, Alistair and Ellen. I think Dennis opened. Is Dennis closing? Thank you. And John as well, thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you next week.